Despite Donald Trump's many legal and moral abuses, most Republican Party leaders continue to support him. Now, why is that? How can we explain Republican complicity? What's happened to the GOP where unquestioning Trump loyalty is now more important than traditional conservative values? Author Kristen Monroe offers an analysis of today's GOP mindset and why only a handful followed their consciences. Her book, Politics, Principle, and Standing Up to Donald Trump: Moral Courage in the Republican Party, has just been published by Ethics International Press Limited in the UK. The book, co-authored with 13 students, includes many interviews, including one-time Trump aide Anthony Scaramucci and Lincoln Project co-founder Rick Wilson, both of whom now are outspoken Trump critics. Monroe, a professor at University of California at Irvine, provides insights into courage in politics and new analysis into the Trump phenomenon be harmful for democracy. We're delighted to have her with us today on the Lean to the Left podcast, where we focus on politics and the key social issues of our time. Welcome, Professor Monroe. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I'm just wondering what prompted you to undertake this detailed analysis of moral courage or the lack thereof in the Republican Party?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my sons is a lawyer who in his spare time writes science fiction fantasy. And he's a very good writer. And I was trying to come up with the title for the book, and I sent him the title, and he wrote back and said, Moral Courage in the Republican Party? I guess I'm not the only person in the family that does science fiction fantasy anymore. Yeah, it's always interesting. A couple of things. It's always interesting to look at cases that don't fit, because it'll tell you something about the norm and what's going on in there. And then the other thing was that I run a summer program every summer at the University of California, Irvine Ethics Center. And I have a bunch of students every year who work with me in a mentoring program. So you show them how to do research and you get them involved in it. And I had just finished a book on moral courage as a general phenomenon, because I've studied moral courage and moral choice. And some of them said, what about people who stand up to politicians? And they wanted to do some work. So I agreed to work with them during the year. And these kids were great. They worked all year. Each of them got assigned a person that we thought was an interesting person to examine. Some of them were very obvious, like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger.
Right.
Some of them were less obvious, like Miles Taylor. One of the students actually came up with Taylor, wanted to look at him. We tried very hard to get interviews with people, nearly did with a couple people who then said, maybe we really shouldn't go on the record. So what we did was, when were able to get interviews, we interviewed the people and asked them directly, why did you do this? What made you different from other people? And when we weren't able to get interviews, we looked at a lot of writing, social media interviews they gave to people who are more important than I was. And so there's a lot of testimony and material out there. So Liz Cheney, for example, we nearly got an interview with her, but at the last minute she backed out.
Oh, it's too bad.
Yeah, it's too bad. And what's interesting, I'm a very liberal Democrat, but as a scholar, you have to go into this objectively. And I had a lot of respect for these people after I read some of their works, more for people like Cheney and Kinzinger, perhaps, than some of the other people who are still waffling on things. But these are people that I think did act on a basis of conscience.
Yeah. Okay. Numerous leading Republicans who once strongly criticized Donald Trump, people like Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, he called Trump in 2016 a kook, crazy, unfit for office, among other things. Now he's one of Trump's leading supporters. And then, of course, we've got Trump's own VP choice, Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, he who criticizes childless cat ladies. Vance in 2016, that cracks me up. Childless cat. He's got all the women that have cats pissed off at him. What's he think he's doing?
He did give a comment where he said he was being sarcastic. He really likes cats. He didn't say anything about women, but cats are okay.
That's good to know. Anyway, in 2016, he called Trump a disaster, a bad man, and morally reprehensible.
Mm.
Now he's Trump's sycophant in chief. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So,
Yeah.
why is it that so many Republicans who once held strong anti-Trump views, like these two guys, now kowtow to him? Why is that?
I think I haven't studied them particularly, so
Yeah.
I'm guessing here.
Okay.
Good
Well, we'll
way.
take your guess.
All right. I think it's a combination of things. I read through the material that Vance had, they published in the papers on all the emails that he had with his friend from law school, transgender friend. And it was very interesting. I don't know if you read those.
I did.
Yeah, it's a whole series of emails that were shared back and forth
Okay.
with a person who I think is now a woman called Sophia, was a man, I think, when Vance first knew them.
Okay.
And he sounds very liberal in many ways. He talks about how it wasn't George Floyd, it was another Black murder, and said, I must be difficult to be a Black man in this country. I don't have any idea what it's really, but I know it must be hard. Said things that are very reasonable. And then as it goes on, the friendship kind of ends. And I think a lot of it is political opportunism. I think he just realized he has a comment about Sidley and Austin, which is a big law firm that he took a job with. Didn't really want to work there, but the prestige and the money were so good he couldn't turn it down. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. It's political opportunism. You realize that it's going to be in your benefit to work with this guy. I think that another part of that is he's the one, you have to work with them. And I think a third part of it may just be that Trump has things on people. He's not above pulling out a lot of stops and blackmailing people in many ways. So
Yeah.
people like Scaramucci were very adamant that this was part of what was going on, that Trump has just got things on people that they don't want to come out.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Now, what about Mitch McConnell? He initially said that Trump's role in the January 6th insurrection was clearly impeachable.
Yeah. So
Yeah, but then the big flip, he made sure that the Senate didn't convict Trump
right, right.
after he was impeached by the House for inciting that attack on the Capitol. Why did he do that?
I don't know. Mitch McConnell is probably the most puzzling to me
Uh-huh.
because at that moment, I think McConnell could have changed things. During the period, I think when it just happens, he said, if this isn't impeachable, I don't know what is. And I think privately he said, I've had it with this guy. Let's get the Democrats, get rid of him. And if he had gone against Trump, I think it would have changed things. I don't understand why McConnell did this because Trump has not gotten along well with McConnell. They've butted heads, and I think Trump likes to be the boss. He doesn't want to have anybody challenge him, and McConnell does too. So I don't quite understand what was going on here,
Yeah.
especially given the way Trump treated McConnell's wife. She was in the cabinet, wasn't treated too well. But yeah, that's a mystery to me.
Yeah. It surprised me that first it surprised me that McConnell came out and said it was an impeachable offense because I didn't really think he would say that, but he did. But it didn't surprise me when things went south when it came time to vote on the impeachment.
Well, I
And
think McConnell has made it his goal in life, political life, to frustrate what the Democrats wanted to do, and that he
yeah,
thought this as something that, well, again, like McConnell's refusing to even consider Obama's nomination for the Supreme Court. That was outrageous.
yeah,
It
for
was
sure.
just, I want to win. That's the only thing I could figure out. Then that's just a guess.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
got one question for you. Do you think these people have any kind of core values at all?
They don't have the same core values that you and I have. This
Yeah.
was very clear that when I did interview the people and we looked at the writings for the people, that there were a couple of things that were core values. First of all, oath of office was very important. And it wasn't just the people we interviewed. There's a wonderful frontline show on January 6th, and they have interviews with Rusty Bowers. And he talks about how they lied to him and they wanted him to violate his oath of office. And this was something that was sacred to a lot of people. They
Right.
take it seriously. And I grew up in a political family. My father was a judge. My grandfather was a state senator. I was always around the courthouse. I knew all these people. They weren't big people. They weren't terribly important. They might be a county clerk. They might be, but they took seriously what they were doing. When they were given the chance and the opportunity and the responsibility to certify an election, this was something that was their job. This was who they were, and that was a contribution. And I think they were deeply offended that Trump would actually push them to do that. Bowers makes that very clear in his testimony to Congress.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to know what you think about MAGA followers that continue to believe in him. Even on Twitter today, they're writing that Trump was sent from God to save our nation. Now, how has he managed to convince people, most of whom he could care less about, to so strongly support him? How?
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? How
Yeah.
The religious Christians and the MAGA people, a lot of them are deeply religious, have gone for a guy who is a serial womanizer, been married several times, is a casino owner. They should not go for him. All I can figure out is that he's done the kind of populist appeal that I think this is Scaramucci really helped me understand that. Trump, I don't necessarily know that Trump was conscious of it, but he tuned into something which was a deep-seated need, a feeling of being wronged, a feeling of being rejected and overlooked, especially by the elites, the East Coast elites. This is the name they always use. And I think when 2008 came along and the Wall Street got bailed out and Main Street didn't, as the phrase goes, I think these people felt very aggrieved. And I think Trump came on and said, I'm going to take it all. I understand you. I hear you. I will be your savior. And this is a kind of classic thing that you see in populism and authoritarianism, that there's a crisis and that a kind of strong man comes and he will take care of you. He will restore you to where you should be. And he foments a crisis and keeps the crisis going, which Trump did very well. There's always a kind of chaos around him. So that's the only thing I can figure out, that the kind of legitimate sense that a lot of working class people who were poor, who weren't getting educated, who looked around and they saw a lot of hyphenated groups who were getting benefits, getting into college, getting jobs that their kids weren't getting. They resented that. And Trump both fostered it, nurtured it, and exploited it. And that's, I think, really that's the basis of it. And even now, when he says things like, they're going after me, I'll take it because then they'll come for you. That's the kind of Christ-like metaphor, that I'm being persecuted. And I was shocked when I saw people comparing it to Christ.
I saw it on Twitter this morning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Some lady said that. And incredible to me. When Trump was at the apparent, I shouldn't chuckle, I guess it wasn't funny when somebody took a shot at him and nicked his ear. But he certainly has played that for all it's worth, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anyway, there was a woman that was interviewed on the news, and she was one of the supporters there at the rally, and she tearfully said that his rallies always made her feel wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why. That guy, first of all, he just drones on and repeats the same crap all over again, all of his grievances against Democrats and the media. Who wants to listen to that? So I don't understand why anybody could say that he makes her feel better.
I think he makes her feel she's important, that he's listening to her in a way that other people are not listening to her. Patty Murray, when she first got into politics, Senator Murray from Washington State, went and somebody said, "Oh, get out of my office. You're just a mom in tennis shoes." And she used that as a slogan when she ran for the Senate. And I think that's the kind of phenomenon that you're having, that a lot of politicians don't want to mess with these people. Hillary Clinton refers to them as a basket of deplorables. Well, people don't want to feel that they're not valued. And I think Trump does feel that. And I think he adopts this kind of, it's a folksy air in some weird way. Even the vulgarity that he has on the expletives and really crude stuff, he's just one of us. He's not any better than we are. He's not talking policy to us. If you looked at the debate between Biden and Trump, the thing that struck me was not so much that Biden was having cognitive difficulties, is that he'd been very badly advised. He was getting lost in the thicket of policy. So he would go on and go into great detail And most people don't understand it. They don't have the background for it. They want a simple answer. They want something that's clear, that they just distill the essence of it. And Trump does that. He does it by fabricating things and saying things that aren't true, but he gives them a narrative which makes sense. And this is very classic. Academics look at something called social identity theory, where we think about who we are in relation to other people. And Trump has pegged into that by saying, you've been overlooked, you've been neglected, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to right the wrongs. And a lot of people really feel that they have been overlooked and neglected. And I think that's what Trump is doing. And that's what classically happens with a populist leader. And that populist leaders don't have so much policy because they don't really have an agenda. Trump doesn't really have. Now he has the 2025 project, which is very frightening.
The Republican platform mirrors the draconian plans set forth in the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which would dramatically increase the president's power well beyond what the founding fathers ever envisioned. In a new series of articles, Lean to the Left writers C.J. Waldron and V. Susan Hutchinson explore how allies of Donald Trump hope to increase the power of the presidency, eliminate career government positions, fire government employees who disagree with Trump, and cede regulatory responsibilities to the individual states, ignoring the Articles of Confederation. It's critical to understand key parts of this manifesto in context with the current and future Republican proposals.
But now he's got serious intellectual people behind it that are going to try to change things in ways which are very disturbing if you care about democracy. But basically, it's trust me. And people they tend to like politicians and then sort out the policy issues afterwards. So,
Would you think what he's done to the Republican Party, is it doomed, do you think?
I think it's totally changed it. I don't know if it can go back or not. It's hard to see how it can. You were asking about core values, and I think the core values that emanated from people that I interviewed, religion was often important to them. Cheney talks about being about God and her faith. Mitt Romney and Jeff Flake, who are both Mormons, talk about that. The other thing they mentioned was their legacy. A lot of them said, how was I going to explain to my children that I stood by and did nothing while the democracy was being destroyed? So that was part of it. And then it was the basic beliefs in democracy. And if you look at it, there were three things that really motivated the Republicans who opposed Trump. One was that he's not really a conservative. He doesn't have a consistent conservative agenda. Second one is that he's not really democratic. He doesn't understand and certainly doesn't respect the norms of a democracy. So that trying to get on the phone with Secretary of State Ratzenberger and tell him, give me a break, I just need 11,000 more votes. He doesn't have any concept of what this is. But the third part of it was, I think, a very visceral kind of gut reaction. This is not who we are. So Miles Taylor said that he was in the White House. He's very conservative. He was excited to be there. He was young. He was ambitious. And they had this policy where they were separating children from their parents when they came across the border. And they were putting the children in cages. And his advisors finally talked him out of doing that. And Taylor said, Trump kept coming back and saying, we've got to do this. We've got to do this. Only a harsh policy will make these people know that we're serious. And Taylor said, I went home and I'm not the kind of person that can be part of an administration that puts children in cages. And this is, I think, a very basic kind of human decency factor. So that was the third factor that I think went on. I gave a talk about the book, and one of the women came up and said, I'm a lifelong Republican, but he lost me at grab him by the pussy. And it's just the crudity of it, the vulgarity, the revenge, the fact that we're supposed to use the Department of Justice to have a military trial with Liz Cheney. It's ridiculous. This isn't something that Americans are used to doing. And I think it offends a basic core set of decency that we have.
That grab him by the pussy comment probably solidified him with a bunch of MAGA males, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you ever watched Jordan Klepper on The Daily Show, and he had a wonderful interview. He went out and he was talking with people at Trump rallies, and he asked them about it. And a couple of the guys says, I want to grab him by the pussy too. I'd like to get all the pussy Trump gets. And it's, oh my God, there's no shame here at all. One man said, another man's sexual harassment is another man's flirtation. And I thought, oh my goodness gracious. So there are some definite differences in values that are going on here.
Yeah, and what did you think of Trump defending the size of his whatever, because he was being teased because he has small hands, and so therefore he must have a small. So what do you think about that?
Wow.
This is one thing, is make it stop. I don't really want to look at this anymore. We have to listen to this. So
I know, and that's a guy that's the president of the United States talking that way.
I had what I called my mouth would be flapping. It would be, what did they do? And I was in Berlin for part of 2017, and I didn't watch much American news while I was there. And I got on the plane back and read the article about Melania going out and to see immigrant children wearing a jacket that says, I really don't care, do you? And I thought, what? Again, where I'm just flabbergasted. It leaves me speechless. I don't know what to say. It's such a contrast in values.
It
And
sounds like that would be hard to happen for you not to know what to say. That's all I got to say about that.
I thought the Lincoln Project has done a lot of really interesting ads. One of the
I
ads that
have.
was the most effective one in 2020 was a woman with a child who was eating pizza.
Who are you voting for?
That's supposed to be a secret.
Come on, you could tell me.
Okay, then. I'm voting for you.
What?
Yeah. I'm voting for the kind of world that you deserve. A place where people get along better and they care about each other. They like each other.
But you're not really voting for me, are you?
Yeah, I am.
And then they have a picture of Joe Biden. It's time. And I thought, really, what elected Biden was the idea that he was a decent human being.
That's right.
Values. And I was ambivalent about whether or not Biden should go. I thought he'd exited very gracefully. And I thought it was really interesting to look at the proposal that he put forward for the reforming the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Totally, in some ways, very sensible, thought out. It isn't, he worked with people, and he's in a position now to say that he actually is not in, he doesn't have a dog in the game anymore. He's
That's
not
right.
running for re-election.
Yeah.
He can do things. It's freeing him, and I think he's going to go down as one of our better presidents.
Yeah.
Simply in some ways because he was a decent person. He cared about other people, and
Right.
no evidence that I see that Trump really cares very much about anybody but himself.
Yeah.
Even
Right.
his kids. So
What do you think about Harris's chances?
I think they're pretty good. I think
Do
she's
you?
going to do well.
Yeah.
I don't know if you read the Borowitz report, but they had a thing today about J.D. Vance and that they're not happy. They're going after women, childless women. And
Right.
they have this picture of this childless woman who's laughing. And they have Harris with her great laugh and her beautiful smile. And it says, Donald Trump won't be happy until no women are laughing in this country. So I think he's managed to galvanize. The Harris appointment, I think, has galvanized a lot of very critical communities. I think the women is very important. A lot of young people are coming out now. A lot of people who are not women care about birth control and care about some of the.
Can you believe that right now that the Republicans are actually seriously talking about somehow regulating contraception?
Yes, it's very interesting. They say they want to get rid of government, but they want them in our bedrooms, and they want to know when a woman's having a menstrual cycle. Bizarre.
Yeah.
I remember when Obama came in, I think David Letterman said, he's so good you can't really joke about him. So I'm going to continue to joke about George Bush. And I think Trump was good for the late night comedians, but he was a disaster for the country.
Yeah, that's for
I
sure.
hope she does well. I think it's going to be interesting to see who she picks for her VP.
Yeah,
I think
that's for sure.
vetting
It will be.
Vetting him very carefully. And
Have you got a favorite?
I think, as Pete Buttigieg says, there's so much talent there, any
Yeah.
one of them that they're talking about. I
Really?
think Mark Kelly might be a good person because of the border. He's familiar with the immigration question. He lives there. He's an astronaut. Scheer is interesting choice because he's come out and said J.D. Vance says he's from Appalachia. He's not.
Hmm.
He's really going to Yale Law School is a little hard to present yourself as a poor kid from Appalachia, which he is in some ways. We need to have Pennsylvania. That's a good state to
Right.
get. I think he's a little old, but
Yeah.
so I think they're all good choices.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I like the guy's name just escaped me. You just mentioned the guy from The Astronaut,
Mark Kelly.
Mark Kelly.
Kelly, yeah.
Yeah, I really I like that background, but I don't like the fact that he'd have to leave the Senate.
He's got a governor who's a Democrat who would
Yeah,
appoint
that's
a
true.
Democrat. So I think,
He'd appoint a Democrat.
yeah, I don't think that's a problem so much.
Okay, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Um, all right. As you worked on your book, you and your group of students
Yeah.
that you worked with, you interviewed many Republicans, right? And I've read where you said that some of them are confused about Trump, but still support him.
I think the people who are the supporters of Trump there are some people who are very confused. I think it becomes a very basic kind of identity question. If you've been a lifelong Republican, it's hard to vote for a Democrat. And I think these people have the prominent ones have taken tremendous risks here. And one of the things that troubles me is that we're not doing a good job in this country at having conversations across differences, so that if you have very strong political views, you tend to speak only with people who are like that, who
True.
share those views. I grew up in a small town outside of St. Louis, and I have a couple really good friends who were Trump people. And I tried to go into interview mode and say, okay, rather than saying, what's wrong with you? How can you possibly support this man? I said, what is it that you like about him?
Oh,
And the first thing was abortion. This was before Roe was overturned. And I can understand that. If you genuinely believe that it is life at inception,
Right.
then it makes sense. So that was something where I didn't want to say you're an idiot. I could understand and respect that. I disagreed with it. And then the second thing was immigration. And it's interesting to me, I don't think anybody has a really good immigration policy. We came pretty close to one, which Trump torpedoed because he wanted to be able to use it
That's
as a
right.
campaign thing. So
That's
this
right.
is another example of where he cares less about the country than more about his own political future. And the contrast between him and Biden is so striking. I don't know if you watched Biden's speech.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah.
Everybody. It was very gracious, and it was absolutely right. It's time you recognize you care about the country more than you care
Yeah.
about yourself. And that's what you want in a politician.
Yeah.
You want somebody that recognizes reality, which Trump doesn't, I don't think, and somebody who cares about someone and something more than themselves. That's one of the things that troubles me about it all. I think the Republicans are issuing a warning to us that it's ours to be lost, and it can be lost.
Yeah.
People say it can't happen here, but it could happen here. We've had different movements in the past, in the 30s. We had Father Conklin and Huey Long. A lot of people were very extreme, more populist, authoritarian leaders. It could happen again.
Yeah.
And this is something where I hope people will go out and vote, because it really is about Trump. It's the issue is whether or not you want to have the joke was you can vote for an 81-year-old and then vote again later, or you can vote for a 78-year-old and never have to vote again or never be able to vote again.
Yeah.
Now, this isn't this situation anymore, but I do think that people need to go out to vote because it's not clear what Trump would do.
He said the other day that if people voted for him, then they wouldn't ever have to vote again.
And on the
What
one
did that
hand,
mean? Was he really saying that he was going to end elections and become a dictator for life?
I
Is
think
that what
more
he-
likely what he was saying was, I don't really care about any other politicians, just vote for me and then that's it.
Yeah,
Go
that's
out and
probably
vote.
it. Yeah.
I think that's really what he meant. On the
Yeah.
other hand, there is a subtle interpretation, and sometimes those things are there. And some of the people who are leading the 2025 project are not people who care about democracy.
Yeah.
And they have very sophisticated plans to change things, getting rid of the Department of Education, getting rid of the DOJ. This is outrageous. That's not democratic.
People need to pay attention to what's in Project 2025
They
because
do.
it would just upend our whole democracy.
I think it would. Yeah.
Yeah. As a side note, I just want to put in a plug. I have a blog site. It's called Lean to the Left .net. And I have two writers who are doing a series of articles that take Project 2025 apart,
Good.
topic by topic,
Good.
and explain the impact of
Yeah.
those topics on voters.
Yeah.
And we're about halfway through the series, and
That's
and
important to do. I'm glad you're doing that.
yeah, anyone that would like to see that, just go to leantotheleft.net, and you'll find them there. Now, you've written a book on moral courage. You mentioned it a minute ago at the top of the show. It's called When Conscience Calls: Moral Courage in Times of Confusion and Despair. And that's among what? You've written about 20 books together so far, right?
Yeah.
How did that book influence your decision to write this latest book, Politics, Principle, and
Well,
Standing
I
Up
got out
Front?
of it as I was trying to, if you look at moral courage as a concept, which most people don't, I'm a political theorist and an ethicist, so I think about it. We generally define moral courage as doing the right thing. What does that mean? That's a little vague. So I
Right.
wanted to take a kind of Aristotelian approach and say, if you want to understand something, go out and find what people think of as they call a sheep and see what they all have in common. And
Right.
so we took people that most of us agreed had demonstrated moral courage, and we did some wonderful interviews with them. Really interesting people, some American, some abroad, really interesting human beings. And we tried to say what it was that made up moral courage. And it's basically behavior that it strikes your core values so deeply. We have core values that basically become who we are, so that you're not somebody who can murder someone when push comes to shove. You're not somebody that can lie or can cheat. It just isn't who you are. And to violate those core values is like a betrayal of yourself. And so most of these people were people that stood up and said, I can't do it. So we had an Indian gentleman who was in the civil service. He'd had a wonderful career, and he felt very strongly that his boss was discriminating against people on the basis of caste. And he said, I'm an Indian civil servant. So I swore allegiance to the Indian Constitution, which says you won't discriminate on people on the basis of caste. And so he sued the Indian government, and he actually won. And he thought that he was probably ruining his career. The person who did the interview with him was his granddaughter. Yeah. And she said, what did you think about it? You were going to lose your job. How are you going to support mommy and auntie? And he said, being a parent is about more than just putting food on the table. Being a parent is showing you what it means to live, to be a human being. And that's what a lot of these people were like. We did an interview with Loretta Lynch, who was the public utility commissioner for California when they had the Exxon crisis, and Gray Davis, who had appointed her and said he would appoint her to the California Supreme Court if she would just not do this investigation. And she said, I took an oath of office. I have to do it. And she was on the phone with Bob Ruman and Bill Clinton and Gray Davis, and she stared them all down. She did the right thing, and she was absolutely excoriated. They really criticized her and ruined her career. She's gone on and she's done other things, but a lot of people, one of the guys was head of the Los Angeles school district, and he said when Trump came in, he got the board to pass a ruling that they would not yet let any ICE people come on and look for illegal aliens, immigrants. And I said, what are you going to do if they come with troops? He said, I don't know. I worry about that at 2 a.m. But he said, I was raised by grandparents who were immigrants. And when I hear Trump criticizing immigrants, I think about my grandparents. And he said, all these immigrants who come here, they just want the American dream. They want what our grandparents wanted, what Trump's ancestors wanted, a better opportunity. So these are people that it's very much who they are as human beings. And it means that they really can't do anything other than stand up and say, no, this is wrong. Even if it's going to hurt me, I have to do it.
Yeah.
And so it was a wonderful project. And it was interesting for me to work with some of the students on it too.
That must be a real thrill for you to do that.
I love working with these kids.
I bet you do.
Yeah, I don't take any pay for it. We just do it during the summer.
Sounds good.
They
Yeah.
don't get any credit. They don't have to pay anything. It's just a great opportunity. We now have, after COVID, we had about 40 students in the project.
Wow.
2019, and after
Yeah.
COVID, we went online. We now have over 500 kids.
Oh
So,
my goodness gracious.
yeah,
Wow.
and
Wow, that's
they're
impressive.
from all over the world. So one
Yeah.
year I had a couple kids from India and China who got up at 3 a.m. to do the modules. I thought that's really dedication. So
Yeah, it
they're
is.
great kids. Yeah. But-
You know what? Mark Kelly must have heard me when I couldn't remember his name because I just got an email from him.
oh, really? You're kidding? Oh, great.
It's a fundraising email.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
It,
get a
it
lot of-
went out. It's in support of Colin Allred,
yeah,
and who I do support. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But I just thought that was funny because I
yeah.
couldn't remember his name. And then right then the email came in.
You can
Hey,
remember his
Bob,
name.
don't you know who I am?
Oh no.
Oh, that's great. That's funny.
Yeah. All right. Listen, give me your elevator speech on what's at stake in the November election.
I think democracy is at stake in the November election. And I think the civic culture of the United States, which is a basically very decent, warming, welcoming culture where we take people in and everybody's equal, the rule of law, fairness. I think these things are at stake. I think if Trump gets in, I think we're going to have these challenges to these very basic ideals that make up who the American population and the country is.
Okay.
Mm.
On that note, how can people find your book? Where is it?
You can go online at Amazon. It's there.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah,
That's
that's
good.
probably the easiest.
Yeah. All right. Listen, I want to thank you so much for being with us on the Lean to the Left podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, my pleasure being here, and I hope people will go out and vote.
All right. Thank you. Hey, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and that you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And you can check out upcoming shows, guests, and topics at podcast.leantotheleft.net. Subscribe to our audio version there and to our video shows here at YouTube. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gaddy and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now, it's two. Bob Gaddy is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1. Instagram at Lean to the Left 1. TikTok at Lean to the Left. LinkedIn at Bob Gaddy. And YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gaddy signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.